A complete effort for the Cardinals in Cincinnati as St. Louis takes Game 2 to get back to their winning ways. Plus, we talk about the revelation of Wednesday's starter and the near no-hitter for the Memphis Redbirds, coming up on B-Shape Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Shape Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you. It is Tuesday evening, May 28th, 2024, as the St. Louis Cardinals got back in the win column on Wednesday night with a nice 7-1 win in Cincinnati over the Reds in a game where really all facets of the club performed really well. And a day after we talked about Nolan Arenado expressing his frustrations over the recent struggles at the plate and the season not going to his hopes and dreams, Arenado breaks out of it with a two-run homer. Imagine that, a rocket hit to left field, pulling the ball in the air, which is exactly the thing that he said he hasn't been able to do very much of this season 24 hours ago. Well, he does it on Tuesday night. Cardinals win it 7-1 as they get a complete offensive performance. Cardinals running the bases well to lead to additional runs. Cardinals getting really good pitching as Kyle Gibson had a no-hitter going through the first 5 innings of his start. Although with an elevated pitch count, he wouldn't have been able to go 9 on his own. Still ended up with a very fine outing as he lowers his season ERA to 3.60 with a 6-inning gem. And the bullpen coming in and doing a nice job. How about John King and the revelation he's been for the Cardinals so far this season? All that and more coming up on B-Shape Daily as we finally talk about Wednesday's starter officially named. The 5th spot in the rotation is going to Andre Pallante for now. We'll get into our thoughts on that and update you on something pretty cool that happened in Memphis tonight. The St. Louis Cardinals were not the only affiliate that had a shot at a no-hitter, as a combined no-no was on the table for the Memphis Redbirds tonight. They fell just short, but we'll tell you how close they came coming up on B-Shape Daily. Make sure you hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your video to subscribe to the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals Writer YouTube channel. Cardinals content all season long coming your way with a daily podcast and other videos as the summer progresses. Tonight, 7-1, Cardinals win it over the Reds, getting right back to the winning ways. Like we had said, maybe a little bit of a sluggish night for them on Monday, really an afternoon start, 3:10, which I think contributed to the Cardinals maybe getting a lack of sleep and just not being very crisp offensively outside of that one Paul Goldschmidt homer on Monday. I feel like they came tonight and were in a much better place. And offensively, you saw the signs of that. 13 hits. They really were able to get to Red starter Andrew Abbott in this game. He gave up 6 earned runs, 7 hits allowed, 2 walks allowed. Cardinals hitting a couple of home runs off the Cincinnati starter. We mentioned Arenado's. You got one from Nolan Gorman as well. Shortly after an ill-fated bunt attempt, he tried to bunt his way on base for a base hit. Found the left side of the infield wide open as they tried to shift him as much as they legally could do so now in Major League Baseball. Bunted it foul. Radio broadcast said it would have been good for a hit had he been able to keep it fair. But it's a pretty good thing that he didn't, because Nolan Gorman hits a rocket for a home run on the next pitch, and that's hopefully the last time he attempts a bunt here in 2024. And you maybe could say in his career, although I guess there could be some extenuating circumstances at some point that would call for it. But Nolan Gorman needs to be swinging away, because when he does, he can hit it a long way. So probably for the best that bunt did not work out. Arenado, his 4th of the year, and Gorman, his 9th of the season. Both those coming off of Andrew Abbott. And that's another lefty-lefty bomb for Nolan Gorman. It just seems like those matchups not particularly frightening for the left-handed slugger, who has been able to find some lefties that throw pitches in the zone, and when they do, he's still able to capitalize on that. So becoming a more complete hitter before our eyes, or at least a more complete power hitter, because we understand Gorman's still hitting for a low batting average, 214. But the OPS up to 734. You've got Burleson up at 764. A nice day for Ivan Herrera. Gets his OPS up to 706. He goes 3 for 5 with a run scored and an RBI. Goldie, a 2 for 4 day, so he continues on the right trajectory. Had a double in this one as well. I like the lineup that the Cardinals and Ollie Marmol put out tonight in Cincinnati. Mason Wynn batting first and Lars Nootbaar batting second. Not a big day for Newt, just 1 for 5, a couple of Ks. But Mason Wynn going 1 for 5 with a couple of runs driven in. He had a double in this one. But I liked having Brendan Donovan batting ninth, because it essentially, every time other than that first time through the batting order, set up a nice 9-1-2 combo with Donovan, Wynn, and Nootbaar that really feels like it packs a punch in terms of getting on base. And Donovan was able to do it from the 9-hole tonight, going 2 for 3, scoring a run. And I believe it was Michael Ciani that pinch ran for Donovan after he reached on a double. They called it an error, so it wasn't a triple, but he ended up getting to third base, and Ciani pinch ran for him and scored. So really, you'd credit Donovan with 2 runs scored, although he was a little bit banged up after. We were wondering if it was an injury-related removal, but instead, Ollie Marmol confirmed later on it was just a matter of getting Ciani out there because it was a ground ball on the infield that the infielder may have come home with that ball if Donovan was running. So the fact that it was Ciani guaranteed the Cardinals scored that additional insurance run. Just a nicely played game by the Cardinals tonight all the way around. You got good pitching, as we mentioned. You got timely hitting. You got solid base running, and even some managerial decisions that I think put the Cardinals in the black in terms of being ahead on some of the moves that were made. Feels like it was another nice game for the Cardinals, and right back where they left off. If you really just take a look at Monday and say, yep, that's the aberration, the version of the Cardinals that we have seen over the past couple of weeks is more the team that they're capable of being right now. And Monday, I really do think when you consider the travel ramifications of playing a game late night in St. Louis on Sunday Night Baseball, big rain delay, travel into Cincinnati, it's 4 a.m., and you have to play that afternoon. I think it did wear on the Cardinals in the way that they performed on Monday night. But to have the offense back just the same way that we have come to see this Cardinals offense perform over the last couple of weeks was really refreshing to see. They get 16 runners on base. It was another game where they don't do much with RISP specifically, 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, but a couple of powerful swings, 2 two-run homers. Arenado and Gorman both had a man on base when they hit their big fly, and the offense putting up 7 runs. I mean, they continued to add on throughout the game. That's another sign that we talk about. 4 innings, they score at least 1 run, a couple of crooked numbers mixed in there as well, and adding on throughout the game. They get to the starter. Like all of the things that we've talked about saying, hey, these are kind of benchmarks that you'd like to see the Cardinals attain to really feel like they are a team that could be serious about contending. Well, tonight's game had a little bit of everything. Kyle Gibson would not have been able to pitch a no-hitter tonight on the merit of his pitch count, simply because he was at the 86 pitch mark before he gave up that first hit in the 6th inning, which did happen to be a home run. I don't know what it is with the Cardinals giving up no-hit bids on homers, but Sonny Gray did it a couple of weeks ago. Kyle Gibson does it tonight, but he finishes that 6th inning, goes 6 innings, 1 run. It was on the homer, so it was earned. 2 hits allowed, 2 walks allowed, and 6 Ks for Gibby as his ERA at 3.60. He's really been pretty decisively the Cardinals' number 2 starter this season, at least in the way that he has performed. Lance Lynn, I'm going to check this right now, has an ERA in the same area, but the consistency that Kyle Gibson has brought to the Cardinal rotation has been really a sight for sore eyes compared to some of what we saw from this club last year. Lynn does have the lower ERA at 3.45, and he was great in his start on Monday. You take away the couple of errors, again, Cardinals weren't playing especially crisp in that game offensively and maybe a little bit sluggish defensively too in Game 1 of the Cincy series. But Lance Lynn with a 3.45 ERA has pitched well. Kyle Gibson, 3.60. Those are the 2 acquisitions that the Cardinals made to begin the offseason. And right now, I do think John Mozeliak deserves some credit for being able to put that group together. And how about Sonny Gray, the other acquisition, obviously, leading the rotation with a 2.60 ERA. So if you, Gray, Lynn, Gibson combined for about I don't know what it would be, 3.1 ERA, something in that range. They've all done a nice job. Got to find a way to get Michael as consistent, but we talked about yesterday or whatever day that it was, how he's really been kind of plugging along with those 6-inning, 3-run performances. Look at the month of May, Miles Michaelis has been solid. The ERA is not going to reflect that because he had too many games where he got beat up, and he's up to he's got a 5.64 ERA. It's slowly going down, but it's not going to happen particularly quickly because even his better games this year have been in that range of a quality start still, but 6 innings and 3 runs. And so that's kind of your stable of 4 starters. And then you look as the St. Louis Cardinals to find a number 5, and they're settling, at least for now, on Andre Pallante, who is officially, we finally got him to commit to it. He's going to make that start on Wednesday. It's an afternoon game, early start time again for the Cardinals as they'll take on the Reds in the series finale. You look at the numbers this year for Andre Pallante. We remember him from the beginning of the season in the Cardinal bullpen. Not too pretty. 10 innings and a 6.30 ERA in that stretch. Had 5 walks, gave up 7 earned runs, including 1 homer and just 6 Ks. But since he's been with Memphis, I think what you got from him with the Memphis Redbirds is pretty much similar to what the Cardinals can expect to get from Palante in a big league uniform once again, and now installed into their rotation. He had 16 and a third innings pitched across 4 games, 3 of which were starts. The other one was a long relief appearance where he piggybacked with Zach Thompson. 16 and a third innings, 4 runs, all earned, 13 walks to 9 strikeouts. The walk total is what jumps out at you. So Palante's not going to strike out a bunch of guys. And he's also probably going to have a little bit of issue with command. Hopefully not to the extent of 13 walks per 16 innings pitched. I mean, that's what it was for him in AAA. It's not really a very sustainable mark at a 1.65 whip. But as we know, Andre Pallante capable of scattering some of those base runners with the frequency that he is able to induce those double play balls. So ended up with a 2.20 ERA one way or another, despite the walks and the hits that he gave up down there in AAA. You tell me, what are your thoughts about Andre Pallante back into the Cardinal rotation? But this is something that I said weeks ago wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Doesn't mean you have to be excited about it. Doesn't mean that this is the bold move or the sexy move necessarily. You know, sorry, Andre, to imply that you're not sexy. But, you know, Tink Hence would have been fun. And calling up a Sem Roberts would have been fun to a lot of people. I don't know that those moves necessarily would have been the most prudent, particularly Tink Hence. I think you could have made a case for Robertson just because you want to reward AAA performance. But Palante on the 40-man roster, well, as is Robertson, but he's performed well enough in AAA, and I think you can also, if you can bake in the notion of a nice Cardinal infield defense, which hopefully they will have, if Arenado, Goldschmidt play to their capabilities, you know what Mason Wynn's capable of doing, although I wonder if he was charged an error for the misplay that he had tonight. Let me check that out real quick. It was not, because the Cardinals were not charged an error at all, but that was a misplay certainly, as Wynn tried to field one on the short hop to his right and just was not able to come up with it later in the game. But generally speaking, I think infield defense is a strength again for the Cardinals, and that can be a boon to Andre Pallante. But what I would say is when he allows base runners, and Andre Pallante is going to allow men on base, the Cardinals need to make a habit of not bringing the infield in. Allow them to play middle or double play depth and let the ground balls work, because Andre Pallante with an infield in, and the Cardinals have done it so many times, is not a recipe for success because you're trying to get the ground ball from him. So trust your infield arms. Trust that Arenado can make the throws. The Mason Wynn can make the throws. Don't bring your infield in. I don't care if it's bases loaded. Don't care if it's first and third. Largely, you're asking Andre Pallante to go 5 innings, get you 3 or 4 runs allowed at most, and keep you in ball games. ERA doesn't have to be pretty. It's about going out there as the number 5 starter and giving the team a chance to win. Let the offense know, like, if you score 4 or 5 runs, we're going to win this game. As long as I do my job, the bullpen does its job, we're going to be in position to do that. That's what they need from Palante. So you're allowed to give up a run here and there. You do not have to play to keep the opponent off the board with the infield in stuff. It drives me crazy, and they've done it consistently. You can go all the way back to 2022. People talk about the wild card series and how Ollie Marmol mismanaged, and I largely disagree. I think he managed the pitching staff that day about as well as he possibly could have, until maybe recognizing a little earlier that Ryan Helsley, something was not right with him physically. But even as they kind of suspected that, the explanation we ultimately got from Marmol, not to revisit the ancient past, but the explanation ultimately was you sleep a little easier at night knowing that if your season's going to end, it's going to end with the guy that got you there, with the all-star closer who was untouchable for 6 months. And it just didn't work out, obviously. But I thought that day the only mistake that he really made was, I just can't stand the infield in. I would have conceded the tying run and allowed it to continue rather than try to play infield in. And Tommy Edman just couldn't quite dive and catch the ball that really started the unraveling. And look, the reality is, if that batted ball is hit, regardless of infield in or not, you're not keeping the game in a lead state as it was. You're not still going to be leading in the game. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about something that happened a year and a half ago, because that's why you come to this podcast, right? You come for the stuff you didn't know you needed to know, and you could make a case that you actually didn't need to know it. Anyway, Cardinals doing well again now, 7-1 winners on Tuesday, and you look at the standings. They're a game back of the Cubs, who had a nice night as well in their own right. Ben Brown, pitching prospect for Chicago, 7 no-hit innings, I think it was for them, and they had the combined no-no going into the 8th and gave it up. But Cubs win the game. They're 28-27. Cardinals are 26-27, so they're tied in the loss column. And Milwaukee's just kind of treading water. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They lost most recently, and they're 31-23. Cardinals 4.5 games out of the division as we stand here in this recording. Looking at wild card, Braves, Giants, Cubs, Padres, all above 500 right now. So one of those teams would be left out. I think as of the moment, it's the Cubs with their record. They got a 509 win percentage. The Braves are at 596. Giants and Padres are 417, 418 and 417, respectively. But what does that mean? I mean, the Cardinals are right there within not only shouting distance, but striking distance of a playoff spot. So they're certainly in the mix. I think doing some quick math here, Cardinals are 4 back of the Padres in the win column as San Diego is at 30 wins. Cardinals are at 26. Only 1 back in the loss column. In fact, the Cardinals are ahead in the loss column. Padres have lost 28 games. Cardinals have only lost 27. So I'm going to have to pull up the actual standings, wildcard standings for MLB.com to tell me where that puts the Cardinals. Game and a half back of San Diego. I couldn't even do that math on the fly with the negative on the win column and the positive on the loss column. They're a game and a half back. Cardinals have still won 8 of their last 10. Still dealing with that negative 37 run differential. That's not going away anytime soon. It doesn't really functionally matter. It just means the Cardinals have gotten blown out a bunch, and they haven't blown out opponents as often as you'd like. Tonight they did, though. I mean, 7-1 win. You were able to save the triumvirate. Didn't have to use those guys out of your bullpen, and you got nice performances from John King and Ryan Fernandez, who almost ended a man's life tonight. Spencer Steer swung at a 96-mile-per-hour pitch that got away from Fernandez a bit up near the dome, and it was not a strike, but I think he just tied him up so much that kind of produced a sword, as Pitching Ninja would call it. So, Cardinal bullpen, a little bit of an adventure for Fernandez there in that 9th inning, allowed some base runners, walked a guy, gave up a hit, but he had 2 Ks. John King pitched 2 scoreless innings, had 2 Ks. He's got a 1.72 ERA. So, those guys are dudes you trust. Fernandez, 3.32 on the ERA. You know how you feel about the triumvirate, talking about Kittredge, talking about JoJo, talking about Helsley. I mean, that's 5 that you feel really darn good about. We haven't seen Ryan Ludus yet. That's a guy that, it's a mystery man at this point because we haven't seen him. But it's interesting. I mean, the Cardinal bullpen rounding into form. We kind of tend to think the offense is rounding into form. Everybody had a hit today except for Burleson, and he's been one of their better hitters this year. I mean, they're doing a lot of really good things. Are you buying back in at this point? Everything we labeled off about the wild card race, and look, I know it's still late May, so you're not really too trained on the wild card situation just yet. But, I mean, the Cardinals are playing competitive baseball, and now if they can go out and get a win with their number 5 starter, their newly installed number 5 starter, Andre Pallante, on Wednesday, man, that would be a nice boost going into a really tough environment against Philadelphia, who, they've got the best record in the National League, and looking across the way, it's the best record in baseball as well. Percentage points ahead of both the Guardians and the Yankees. The Guardians actually ahead of the Yankees right now in terms of win percentage. But the Phillies, man, they're going to be a tough one, and they're maybe getting caught at the right time here as they've lost 3 games in a row, despite having still the best record in baseball as we sit here today. They lost 1-0 to the Giants on Tuesday, took 10 innings to do it. So they're getting good pitching. Maybe a little bit of a downturn offensively, as their run scored over the past series has not been particularly strong. Beat the Rockies on Saturday, big, but then 2 runs on Sunday against Colorado and 4 runs against the Giants on Monday. So we'll see how the Phillies are when the Cardinals end up meeting up with them later on this week. But the Cardinals are in a spot right now where, look, man, I think they do have the makeup of a team that can certainly get the job done. And I'm going to go into a little more depth about this perhaps later, maybe tomorrow, maybe later in the week. On the big show on Tuesday, my co-host Andy Humphrey came up with a trade idea because I sort of posited like the Cardinals and Royals might actually match up really nicely for a trade, because if you're not following the Royals too closely, they're killing it over the American League Central. They're still behind the Guardians, but they're winning a bunch of games. They're a very, very clutch team. They're like basically if Alan Craig 2013 was a team, that's what they've been with runners in scoring position. It's just been uncanny. But they've got some guys like Bobby Witt Jr. doing a great job. Their pitching, though, is what's been unbelievable. Seth Lugo, Brady Singer has come around. Michael Wacha's pitching well for them. I know I'm leaving a couple of guys out, but they've got a really solid rotation, 1 through 5, really. And knock on wood, they've been able to keep it healthy. The Cardinals, of course, need a number 5 starter. And the Royals have Daniel Lynch, who is in AAA for them, has made some spot appearances this year, but used to be a highly ranked pitching prospect, hasn't really ever panned out consistently in the big leagues. But he's pitching in AAA. He's got like a 4.7 ERA, and he's kind of an odd man out with a Royals rotation that they went out and targeted a couple of spots with Wacha and Lugo in free agency this offseason. Brady Singer has bounced back, and suddenly they've got a rotation that's keeping them very competitive. What they don't have, though, is an outfield. Basically, all of their outfielders, outside of a guy who's kind of a mix between a utility infield outfield type of Tommy Edman guy, Garrett Hampson, every one of them has an OPS below 700, and a lot of them are below 600 or right around there. To where I was wondering, and actually Andy brought it up, Dylan Carlson for Daniel Lynch, I think would be a very interesting trade proposal for both sides. Royals need some outfield. Dylan can use maybe a change of scenery. He did play nice tonight for the Cardinals, and so maybe they're still holding out hope that he can turn into a player for them as he was supposed to have been. But I kind of wonder if the Cardinals get Tommy Edman back at some point, or if they, get a resurgence from Michael Ciani, or maybe Victor Scott shows up again. Who knows? If at all Carlson could become expendable for the Cardinals, maybe to try to take a flyer on a number 5 starter, I've wondered if that would be interesting. So if you listen this deep into the podcast, you can comment in the YouTube comment section below with your thoughts on that hypothetical proposal. But I may do a standalone video on it at some point, because I do think it's interesting. And, your initial reaction might be, no, Cardinals shouldn't trade Carlson for a AAA pitcher. He was once a Rookie of the Year candidate and a really good player and all this stuff, but it has not been working out largely for Carlson this season. And I just don't know if he's going to end up being an odd man out at some point. Very low batting average, obviously, did have a base hit today for the Cardinals, but generally speaking, it's been a bit of a rough go for him, and maybe the Cardinals and Royals could both benefit from a swap of that nature. But that's all we're going to talk about that for tonight. Really just wrapping up from Tuesday's game. Let me know, Cardinals fans, what stood out to you from the win. I think when you're getting complete performances offensively, you're getting the type of pitching, both starting and relief, that the Cardinals have been able to muster. And my goodness, if Goldschmidt and Arenado begin to come around and show some life, it could be a very serious situation. Goldie up to a 670 OPS. Arenado bumps his back up to 677. Get those guys both to that 750, 770 range. It's not to their career norms, but it would be another couple of plus hitters in the lineup. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Mason Wynn's OPSing 781. Nootbaar's at 734. If you get Goldie into that 750 range, if you get Arenado into that 750 range, Burleson, is at 764. That's like a 1 through 5, 1 through 6. Avon Herrera's at 706. Of guys, Gorman, 734. I mean, you could really run 1 through 8 and then figure out the last spot. I mean, 1 through 7, 1 through 8. I think Brendan Donovan, by the way, is going to come around. 2 for 3 today. Another double for him. I don't know, man. I feel like he's going to come around, and I almost don't mind him down in the 9 hole, because he's a gamer. He's going to grind. He's not going to be ego guy when it comes to his spot in the order. He produced for the Cardinals. He's up to 686 on the OPS. If you told me 735 over under, I'd take the over for him, even though he's got kind of a bit of a climb yet to get to that point. I feel pretty confident what the Cardinals are going to get from him. Gorman's up to 734. It's going to be a lot of empty calories, by which I just mean he's going to hit his homers, and that's going to buoy the OPS. But homers score you runs, so we're not going to complain about that. I think he could get to the 740, 750 mark, and maybe a little bit beyond that if he can continue the power stroke. If he hits 30-plus homers, he's going to have a hard time not OPSing at least 740, 750. So if the Cardinals can get back to that point where maybe they don't have any superstars in the lineup, but you roll 1 through 9 and give competitive at-bats and have guys with some varied skill sets, guys that can get on base like Wynn, like Nootbaar, like Donovan, guys that can drive them in and hit the long ball like Gorman, hopefully like Goldschmidt and Arenado are supposed to be able to do. Herrera is just a complete hitter. In tonight's lineup, he had one of the higher batting averages. Burleson's at 297, Wynn's at 297, but third place is Herrera at 276, so a 3-hit game for him. He's a pure hitter. Like, the Cardinals have an offense that I think is compelling. We haven't seen Jordan Walker back yet, and we know that Wilson Contreras is going to do everything in his power to get back to the team as soon as humanly possible. So I do think this Cardinals lineup can be a good one. I know that they're still chasing their tail when it comes to the season-long statistics because they had such a big hole that they had dug for themselves, but they're coming out of it slowly but surely, and the consistency of those efforts, I think, is going to pay off for the Cardinals in the end. And look, I said a number of weeks ago, it was the night of the Contreras injury. I said, look, this is the first night that I just don't feel it. I don't see it. I think the Cardinals missed the playoffs. I've gone the other way, though, since then. I do believe the Cardinals, right now where we sit, I'm above 50% that they're going to make it in. They're showing enough to me that I just believe that they've got the skill set. They've got a front office that's going to be motivated, should be motivated, to fix any holes on this roster. When you get into a July setting and the Cardinals are still competitive, they're going to do everything that they can to continue to build upon what the roster already is, and I think that's exactly what they should be doing. But team-wide, 21st now in OPS. There was a time where they were bottom 5 pretty handily in terms of a lot of these statistics offensively. OPS, batting average are up to 19th. Cardinals could round into form as at worst a mid-pack offense, and I think there is a world where they just continue to play at a top 10 pace the rest of the year, which might get them to 12th or 14th or so on the year, and we'll see what the pitching does to hold up there. Andre Pallante is going to get his chance on Wednesday. I don't think you expect a ton, but I think if you get 5 innings, give up 2 or 3 runs, maybe 4, wouldn't be ideal for the ERA if he did. But what can this offense do to continue to say, hey, that's enough, and especially in this ballpark, you can develop the power stroke and hit some homers at Great American Small Park and maybe come away with another series win. That's what the Cardinals will be looking to do on Wednesday. Want to draw attention, though, before we get out of here, to something that happened in AAA tonight. Memphis Redbirds came within a strike of a combined no-hitter. Saw this on John Denton's Twitter feed. They beat Nashville, the Sounds, 2-0. Chris Roycroft ended up giving up the lone hit with 2 outs in the 9th on a 3-2 pitch. Brutal. But how did the Cardinals, or I should say the Memphis Redbirds, go about doing it? Zach Thompson did not allow a hit over 5 innings pitched. He had 5 Ks. Now he walked 5. I don't know what it is about this AAA strike zone, but I really do think it's a thing that is just completely different than what you're getting in the big leagues. And the problems with walks have been substantial. The stuff is clearly good enough for guys like Zach Thompson, who's getting some strikeouts and not allowing any hits, but not being able to consistently pound the zone has perhaps put him into some tight spots and is why they had to go for a combined no-hitter. You only go 5 innings giving up no hits. And that can happen when you walk 5. Andre Granillo gets a shout-out as he pitched 2 innings of scoreless relief, as did Chris Roycroft. But Chris Roycroft giving up the lone hit. And John Denton put this in his feed as well. Jordan Walker and Victor Scott had a pair of RBI doubles, 1 for each of them, whereas Walker had 2 doubles. He went 2 for 4 in the game, so a little bit more the power direction. Still looking for a home run for Jordan Walker, and I'm curious to see if he gets it within the next few days, if the Cardinals are going to call him up for that June 6th bobblehead night that he's having, his second bobblehead night of the season. It's Star Wars night, so it's more of a theme night, not a wholesale deal, but the Jordan Skywalker bobblehead has a pretty good ring to it, nice look. But man, would that be a bit of a bummer if Jordan Walker is not actually there during the game? We'll see what the Cardinals have in mind. I don't know if the promotional schedule is necessarily something that is going to cause them to make roster moves, but he has been hitting pretty well in AAA. Jordan Walker has. It just hasn't been for power. So we'll see what the Cardinals decide to do there. I'm sitting here on John Denton's Twitter feed, so I'm going to read a couple of other tweets from him because there's some good updates that I think people would care about. Mentioned it before, but Siani pinch ran for Brendan Donovan tonight. There was no injury related to that, according to Ollie Marmol. Donovan just looked a little bit wobbly, rounding second in that moment, and so that's kind of why we wondered. but Siani, of course, pinch ran and then came in to score. I like that role for Siani. If he's not going to be a starter, if you get Tommy back or if you get Dylan Carlson performing at a higher level in center, you could put Siani back into that sort of fourth outfield role. He comes in for defense, but when you know he's already coming in for defense, you might as well pinch run him. And in a spot like tonight, he's on third base. When he comes in, it's a ground ball to an infielder, and instead of coming home with it, they just know, well, we're not beating Siani. He's got too good a speed to be able to cut him down at the plate, and it leads to additional runs. So I really think that's solid managing and a nice way to kind of leverage the assets you have on your bench. What are the skill sets of the players? How can you maximize them? The Cardinals do have a bit of a redundant bench. They've got, Crawford and Carpenter, who mostly do the same thing. They don't play a defensive position outside of Crawford going to shortstop and really doing probably a subpar job defensively this year. But he's backing up Mason Wynn, and that shouldn't be a role that's too vital to the team as time goes along. You'd like to see Wynn playing as much as he possibly can. But you've got, low offensive impact. And Matt Carpenter, I think, is more of a lefty off the bench that you would bring in for a pinch hit spot, but he's not going to give you any value defensively. And that's two lefties as well. So you've got those two guys. You've got a backup catcher right now in Pajes. It's just there's not a lot of utility to that bench, but I do think Michael Siani is an exception to that rule coming in tonight to do a nice job. And then this update from JD as well. Keenan Middleton went through another MRI in medical consultation on Tuesday. He's had some pain in his right forearm, and we thought, man, I remember talking with him in the Cardinal clubhouse a number of weeks ago. He was excited about basically being ready to go out on a rehab. Well, he's had that rehab and has experienced some discomfort and some pain after it. I don't know, man. This doesn't sound great. The Cardinals thought they were going to be getting him back soon, bolster a bullpen that's already performing really, really well. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anytime soon. Anytime you're going back for an MRI, you can basically assume that they're going to have to shut him down for whether it's a week or 2 weeks and then revamp that throwing program. That's the best case scenario. The worst case is they go in and find something structurally wrong where they need to take a lot more time to get him back. I really thought Middleton was going to be a nice signing for the Cardinals, but if he has some bad medical news there, that could be a tough blow. Not a crushing blow because this has been a bullpen that's been effective, but it would have been a really nice luxury to add him back to it, and it doesn't seem like that's happening at least anytime soon. So that's the update on that. We gave you the update on AAA, nearly with the no-hitter. Hey, Kyle Gibson had 5 innings of no-hit baseball tonight. Cardinals win it over the Reds 7-1 as they improve to 26-27. It'll be up to Andre Pallante on Wednesday to try and get the Cardinals back to 500 for the first time in a long time. It was very early in the season the last time the Cardinals were able to say they had a 500 record. We'll see if Wednesday afternoon at Great American Ballpark is going to be the chance for St. Louis to do that once again. But let me know in the comments below, Cardinals fans, how you feeling about the team? How do you feel about the win on Tuesday and where things stand with Andre Pallante now entering the rotation? I want to hear about that offense too. How are we feeling about the Cardinal offense, which if you take away Monday, which I think is a fair thing to do given the travel circumstances for the team, I think they're in a spot where offensively they're just kind of rounding into the team that they were supposed to have been the entire time. That's how I see it. Let me know how you see it, Cardinals fans, and we'll talk to you next time. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you consider joining the membership of the YouTube channel. Get yourself a nice badge and support the channel, etc. Always send me a DM at bschaeffer12 on Twitter if you have any questions about the various ways you can support the podcast and the channel. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B Shafe Daily. Peace.